Support Narativ's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative and check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe and download.
We're going to talk about the NRA today because yesterday was it was sort of an interesting announcement because it was a civil case that was announced by the Attorney General of New York, right? That's New York State. And she, Letitia James, who's been doing a fantastic job prosecuting all things Trump and more. And yesterday she announced that the NRA, she was seeking that the NRA be dissolved because of all sorts of criminality that they've been engaged in, including Wayne LaPierre, the executive vice president, or the former executive vice president, living it up on a yacht, which is, not his yacht, by the way. Who knew the NRA
Always
had a
yacht.
yacht? You got to have a yacht,
You have
right?
to do jazz hands.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. So this guy, he is the epitome of what looks like corruption.
Yeah.
And he and his four senior executives, squandered $62 million, which is a lot of money, in just 3 years, which is great for them because I'm sure they lived a very lavish lifestyle, but not great if you care about the Second Amendment. And, she is seeking the absolute dissolution of this organization, which is for a long time, since 1871, being the standard bearer for gun owning people in America. So that might go away if she succeeds. But then she sort of said that this was nothing political. And I was like, well, I don't know if I buy that this is nothing political, because clearly there's a little bit of politics in the NRA. A little bit, just a touch. So I thought maybe we should do that today. Maybe we should just go through some of the political elements of the NRA, which might still lead to prosecution of some sort. Because this is just the civil case. There's all sorts of things that still have to go on about that could lead to criminal cases or criminal charges. For example, there's the sun is streaming in. There's the IRS charges that may follow. There's the other criminal charges, which we'll discuss in a bit. So here's my first bit, because we've got to look at this guy. Here is, I called this the beginning of the end, because I do think this is sort of maybe, and I'd like your opinions on this, maybe we're looking at something that might soon be happening to the whole of the Republican Party, because not only is he the scariest looking guy in the world, that's his yacht.
So
Nice
fancy,
yacht.
though.
Very fancy,
That's
nice suit.
So such a nice manicure on the fancy man.
It comes with the contract.
No,
being
he's
the
Davy
executive vice
Crockett.
president.
You could give him a musket and he'd take all of Tennessee himself.
So
That's right.
he is he's been living it up on the but this could be what's coming for the GOP. When you think about how important the NRA has been to the GOP in general, and seeing the sort of the cracks now forming for the NRA, people in the grand old party, in the Republican Party, must be thinking, this is coming for us next.
Well, if they're stealing, I mean, yeah, if you're a crook,
Yeah, well,
that's
what the
not,
party's
it's not
become.
political. Right. I think what she was saying was it's not political to win because they're looking at this graft, this incredible thieving of membership dollars that are very specifically chartered to go in a very specific direction. Like, you could spend the money that you're eliciting from people into your nonprofit. You can spend it a certain way, and then you have to be accountable, and you have to show that you spend it that way. You don't do it for your wife's glam squad, your secretary's son's wedding, ice sculpture, and the Italian frickin' tailor to come and measure your crotch for your next suit. That is not how you spend the money.
How do you expect a nonprofit to run without crotch measuring, LB? Come on.
They measure the crotch. He's in there with the inseam. He's got his little tailor in there measuring his inseam.
He's got to look good. Did you see how nice that suit looks? Look how much that suit. That is a very fine suit, and it fits very nicely on him. So, they committed a lot of crimes for sure. He also built this organization around him just to hide all his crimes, because basically she's saying that he had 76 committee members and an audit committee, and you name it, other committees, compensation committees, all hired basically just to cover up the fact that he's stealing from the membership, which is maybe what happens in these events, in these organizations, but it also allowed for the entire Russian disinformation war to come rushing through the NRA and give us Donald Trump. Yeah, and their money. So, Greg, you're pretty well versed on all of this. How big a role did the NRA play in getting Donald Trump elected?
Well, I mean, they spent a lot of money on ads, for one thing, which now they are not going to be able to do because they're going to be spending their money on other things, such as maybe lawyers.
Right.
And the main thing for me, there's a bunch of takeaways here. But first of all, this is about fraud and crime. It's not about the Second Amendment. And any suggestion that it's about the Second Amendment is foolish. This guy, Wayne LaPierre, took money from people who thought they were giving it because they believed in the Second Amendment. So what he was doing was exploiting their belief in the Second Amendment cynically so that he could go on this yacht and spend like gobs and gobs of money on somebody to pay for his travel agent costs or something like that. Like he had like somebody just handling.
I don't know. He was a very good travel agent.
What does she look like, and is she 25? Is my question. I don't know, but you know,
1.9 million or whatever they spent. It should be attractive in whichever way you find attractive, and bags of cocaine for $1.9 million worth of travel services per year. Where's the
lot of
Porsche
money
and the Coke?
In fairness, the yacht itself costs about $400,000 a week to rent. So I mean, I don't know if he was paying for that, but who knows? It might have been.
Oh, that's it. Hey, Zev, why don't we broadcast from the yacht next time?
We should do a show. Amex, right? Actually, there's a whole website dedicated to chartering yachts. I discovered today as I was searching through the internet, and they're very nice looking yachts. And they're very expensive for
Don't go on the yachts.
No, because
I don't know how many times I have to say this.
What happens on the yachts? I want to know what happens on the yachts.
What happens on the yacht stays on the yacht,
right?
Or winds up floating dead in the Canary Islands.
On the yacht, it doesn't.
It goes to Ohio. It gets beamed to Ohio via easily interceptable signals.
It sure does. I'm sure it does. There's 4 staterooms which look very nice. They've been remodeled since since LaPierre was on them, but they're currently very nicely designed, very styled, very nice. Places you could stay for a while if you wanted to, and travel the world while you were at it. So the reason,
I should hope.
Yes. Yeah. So there's lots of money. Oh, look, I've got pictures for you. Here's some photos of the yacht, and also what it looks like now. It looks very nice, doesn't it?
Is that a gun on top of the yacht? What is that?
I've seen bigger.
I bet you have.
Good size.
It's a good size yacht. So the reason why people are sort of, there's this whole situation with the Russians, because, the Russians showed up in 2011, and I'm sorry this graphic is a little cut off, but I'll fill it in for you. Butina and Senator Tershon. There she is. In 2011, these guys showed up and decided to begin their campaign to turn the NRA into a really, a frat party. I don't know what she was doing there, but she does not in real life look like this. I mean, she does, but this was a created version of her in order to infiltrate the NRA. He is the deputy governor, or was the deputy governor of the Russian central bank. So access to a lot of state secrets and funds, and knows Putin very well. We're not sure about their relationship. There might be one there, in fact. But the truth is she had relationships with many, many people in the NRA and within the Republican establishment. And even at some point, even offered to have sex just to get a job, which, I don't know, maybe that's what happens. But
what kind of people do that?
I don't know.
What kind of
people do that?
They're spies.
Oh, the spies do that.
I mean, grad students.
So I just am amazed. These two people, he was a board member of the NRA. He's one of the people who stamped Wayne LaPierre's, bad expenditure forms. These two people were able to bring down the entire NRA and also potentially had a big hand in electing the current president. And it's just
one finger.
It took one finger. It's Goldfinger. So she's talented, obviously, in some things.
She's very talented.
And she got sent back because I don't know why they sent her back, but they did ultimately let her go back.
Oh, why did they let her out of her?
Hero, yeah.
And so she's back in, I'm sure she's very well loved in Russia right now for all her work. But it didn't take long for these guys between 2011 and 2016 to sort of manage their way to quite a prominent position. He was actually trying to get to see the new president, or the newly elected president, in 2016, when they realized that he was actually a full-on mobster as well, and they probably shouldn't let him see the president. So they turned him away on his way to see Trump in early 2017.
Torsion is the guy, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, who was under indictment in Spain. Is that right?
Spain.
Do I have it right?
That's
he is,
right.
yeah. He's like a godfather.
Jose Grinda, yeah.
The Spanish prosecutor said that Trump's son should be very afraid. That's what he said.
That's
so
right.
Torsion is close with Junior. Torsion is close with Rand Paul. Torsion is close with Mitch McConnell. These are people that are, right in the thick of things. And I want to talk, we've focused on the money a little bit, but I want to focus on the politics since, talking about your thing. Now, what politics, what political agenda do Bettina and Torsion and Putin ultimately have? They want Americans to shoot each other up. They want us to kill each other, and they want our country to look like ridiculous, right? Yep. So that's the plan. The
divide
whole
and
NRA,
conquer.
The NRA backing no bans on anything ever. The AR-15, we got to have this because Second Amendment, blah, 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 blah. Even though, like, if you read the Second Amendment, the first two sentences, it's pretty obvious that no, that's not actually, it says right there you're allowed to regulate it. But whatever. Anyway, so they exploit this thing. And why? 90-something% of it, I think it's like 97% of Americans want a ban on these assault rifles, and the NRA refuses to budge on it. Why would they do that? Why wouldn't they, after one of these horrible tragedies that occur all the time with alarming frequency, why wouldn't the NRA say, you know what? We're going to promote safe guns, which is our fucking mission. We're going to promote safe gun use, and we're going to ban these assault rifles that nobody here really needs to be using. They don't do that. Why? Is it because of some weird, twisted, fetishistic Second Amendment thing? No. It's because that's what Putin wants. Putin wants us shooting each other. Nobody in America does. Putin does. Period. So whatever relationship they might have had with Torsion and Russia, whether they were told to do this or whether they just decided that it was best to do, I don't know. But they were clearly implementing and promoting a policy about gun control or lack of gun control that benefited Vladimir Putin at the expense of our kids and our school kids in this country. And it's a fucking travesty. And I hope that these motherfuckers rot in prison.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the true irony of it is that they started an organization in Russia to mirror what the NRA does. It was called, I don't know, whatever it was called. It was protecting gun rights in Russia. Whatever. And there are no gun rights in Russia because they don't let people have guns in Russia. So, exactly. It's not a mirror of what was going on in the NRA. It was just Putin pleasing the NRA brass to show, hey, look, we're doing the same thing here. When in reality, they don't do anything of the sort. And it is the most tragic of American stories that we have had in the last 10, I'm thinking Sandy Hook was 2012. We have had, so many shootings since then, and it just doesn't stop. It seems to continue on and on and on, and it gets worse and worse. And the kind of people that are getting engaged in it are troubled people, but they're somehow getting co-opted into a system, and somehow brainwashed or manipulated into doing this kind of stuff because it only happens in the United States. Like, we don't see these kind of shootings elsewhere, and it's hard to understand why.
Well, I was just thinking you do with like an Anders Breivik in Norway, but then you find similar connections to ideology that was very specially cultivated.
Right. And rarer. They certainly are rarer in other parts of the world. And partly it's the accessibility to guns for sure, but it's also there seems to be an emphasis to it happening here, and it is a grave tragedy.
It's a tragedy. I think here's where we're going to have to navigate from all of the rage that Greg just expressed as a parent and a citizen, and into how radicalization happens, and are radicalization techniques being used with our kids, and especially vulnerable children who maybe can be sought out and found, and pushed into in real life behaviors. I think it's time to very slowly enter that conversation. It's not something to do tonight on a Friday night. It's something that I've been talking about. And there's a very particular community of parents who need to be on the front lines of that conversation because their children are the most vulnerable. And so that's just a whole other, if I start talking about it, I'm going to cry on air in front of everybody because I'm one of those parents. So, so we can get there. It's delicate. It's hard to handle. But let's look at this. Let's go back to the NRA. Let's look at, were they involved with any kind of companies that do things like take algorithms for advertising, modeling for targeting in being used in political campaigns or for political purposes, since they're a very political organization saying, we're being political. Well, you're into politics. Why did the NRA hire Cambridge Analytica? What was that about? Was that strictly about doing some laundering? Was that about sharing their database of members? And doing some kind of fused, targeted campaigning with the GOP and with the Trump campaign? What happened there with the NRA and Cambridge Analytica in 2016? I think that's worth a lot still, even though we're going into this new thing and it looks like the NRA is going to be burned down to the ground. I still want to know, and Americans need to know, all the different elements that were used to do this sort of asymmetrical attack on our population, on our republic of citizenry, for that activated people. Are we looking at seeing the same sort of techniques being used to create a whole bunch of Karens, right, screaming about anti-mask, that were used to create a whole bunch of homosexuals and fetishes around guns? What's going on? Why do they need Cambridge Analytica? Why did the NRA need Cambridge Analytica? What were they doing? It was a trigger the vote campaign, quote unquote, trigger the vote.
Terrible.
Right? There's all this language around. That was done to get people all swept up in the NRA and the Second Amendment and all of this stuff. But I don't know. That's not the company, I think, to go to. Not when they have things like Lukoil in their offices. And we know that all of Cambridge Analytica, what they were sort of piggybacking on was this techniques developed out of SCL Labs, which was set up by the guy out of the St. Petersburg spy school, psych school, that came and set himself up at Cambridge.
Steve Bannon is Cambridge Analytica.
What is this?
So why would Steve Bannon be interested in doing this? Why would Steve Bannon in 2016 be interested in working with the NRA?
The NRA is expensive. Cambridge Analytica is expensive, but the NRA spend its money doing that. What does that have to do with their nonprofit status? Could they spend their money that way?
They spent so much money. In 2016, they spent, I think, about $65 million on various election campaigns. And which is an astonishing figure for any organization, but never mind one that's also squandering all their money on yachts and other things. And, the way they did it, the way they got to that money, because it was way more than they spent in 2012, is by taking their membership money and their PAC money and then mixing it all into one pool, which is basically illegal, and then funneling 30 million of it directly to Donald Trump, because he was their man all the way from 2014 onwards. While Torshin and Butina were there from 2011 to 2016, meeting and greeting everybody, he started appearing at the NRA conventions in 2014 and 2015. And in 2015, even met up with a bunch of these sort of Russian, ambassadors or whatever you want to call them. This guy,
whatever they were,
Klein Preston. I don't know if you ever encountered him. Like he lives in Kentucky or somewhere like that, but he's basically a full-on Russophile. You know, he's madly obsessed with Russia, but he also is an NRA member, and here he is in the very nicely painted red office that he has, where he has all these Russian artifacts. But on the right there, he's outside the dressing room of Donald Trump in 2015 at the NRA convention, and you can't read it here, but it says, you know, waiting to see the next president of the United States, and he does actually get a chance to meet him. Torsion also got a chance to meet him at that time. So we're talking about 2015. You know, the campaign was barely launched. I don't even think it had launched. And there he was already mixing it up with these Russian infiltrators who had gotten into the NRA and found a way to intersect with him. So added on top of that, you've got Cambridge Analytica with a membership, you know, database, which is very, very interesting and important to winning any election in the right. Can you imagine how valuable it is if you're able to understand the psychological the psychographs of all these members and be able to manipulate them in whatever direction you want? I mean, it's a remarkably valuable tool, but it's not something you'd expect the NRA to be doing.
And I've seen this too, that you know, NRA will have videos calling for the silent majority to attack Dems. We're going to come at all this sort of, remember all that language even that Dana Lynch was having on NRA TV about,
yeah, Dana Lynch.
You know, your time's up, and all this sort of incitements to seeming incitements to violence or civil war in the streets, and they have all this.
Yeah, NRA was really the language in 2016 was really crazy, and the ads were crazy. Eric, what are your thoughts as you think about how Cambridge Analytica played a role in 2016 as part of the NRA, but also part of the campaign in general to get Trump elected?
It's an intelligence operation. It has nothing to do with rifles. It's all straight intelligence operation.
So you're saying
I mean, it was an influence. They used the gun thing. Mm-hmm. I totally agree with Greg's analysis that, you know, what do they want? Since they're also mobsters in that, you know, mafia state, they also want guns free floating around here, and the ability to traffic them. Now, if you know some of the backstory, whenever anybody wants to get arguing about gun policy, gun grabbers or this or that, I'm not using your catchwords. Digitize the ATF records from the federal government. Did you know I don't know if there's been a change to this, but for years, you could only ever keep the records from the ATF about gun registrations, I believe, on paper. And so this, there was one of the things, just like they didn't want the CDC collecting, you know, medical information about how many people are getting lead poisoning explosive version as being shot. Like being shot is a health risk. You know, having your liver blown up with a hollow point bullet is a health risk, just like cigarettes or cars. And they spent tons of money saying no, because it's not just death; it's also lost limbs. It's also people that can't walk. It's all that. The gun industry didn't want any of that data, and they don't want the background checks. It's not just about privacy. They don't want you to know where their guns are going, like Syria, like Mexico to the cartels. Something I don't have the stats in front of me. I heard like an obscene percentage of one of the Mexican cartels, not the Jalisco's. What's the other one I'm thinking of? One of the cartels had like 40% of their guns had gone through Vermont at some point, because we have, where I'm from, we have the lowest gun regulations pretty much outside of Afghanistan and Somalia. You just can't bring it in a courtroom. That's it. Everything else is open carry. Lowest crime in America, because we've got nothing to steal. But anyways, seriously, your second cousin is gonna recognize his old television. So there's no point in doing anything. Basically true. But that openness, I mean, when I was in 1991, I'm going to high school in Vermont, and, you know, first week of November is hunting season. And you're talking about, you know, bringing guns in schools. We used to have a stack of rifles in the corner in the principal's office. They would walk in, you'd hand it to Miss McBride. Wow. And she'd check the chamber and you'd make sure it was empty and nothing. Oh yeah. Vermont, baby.
That's
except
crazy.
No substitutes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. 14th state.
Is that because those bears that DeVos was all worried about might show up, and you have to? What was she saying?
No, you would walk out. No, You're going to get my accent coming out. You walk out the back of the school and they go up Hunter Mountain and they get back in their trucks and you wanted to separate. You brought the gun into school because you left the ammo in the truck and you didn't want it to get ripped off. So you don't want, you can get some ammo, but you're going to have the gun to go with. So you'd bring the gun to the principal's office and Miss McBride would check the chamber, make sure you had nothing, and just stack, and there'd be a stack in the principal's office. And then because
I kind of like Miss McBride. I kind of like her. I like that story.
Presumably that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, presumably that's not the status quo right now for guns.
Stacy, a girl in my class, had a deer dressing service in junior year. She dressed deer. You bring her a deer you've hunted, and you'll get back, head ready for taxidermy and venison steaks. We were all very polite to Stacy.
I'm sure.
Heck of a woman.
But we have a very armed society. I mean, we're just like, you look at America as being just incredibly well armed, and it's kind of scary when you're reaching a point, as we are in politics and in the history of America, where there's just such a huge amount of division, and only one side seems to have the guns.
Well,
we have the guns too.
Really.
We just don't talk about it.
Not really.
Okay.
We don't talk about it.
Right. Okay. So there are guns, but are they willing to fight as much?
Willing to fight? No.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like the aggression and the arms and the militias and all of that seems to be centered around the right wing. It doesn't seem to be sort of a left wing liberal thing. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, and in most of the places where guns are really part of the culture, it's pretty apolitical until these assholes at the NRA got involved, because left, right, and center, everybody where I'm from has guns, because the cops aren't going to get there for 45 minutes. And there are legitimately large animals that might cause problem, and nothing's going to get there and save you. And so, firearms, not of the paramilitary type, are useful. Everyone had one. Nobody had, submachine guns. You don't need an Uzi up on, Bear Mountain or anything. You didn't need that. But also, we had open carry. All these people are fetishizing open carry and white nationalism and a place run entirely by white people and all the guns. Go to Vermont. You're going to be in heaven. I mean, your per capita income is going to drop, $40,000 a year, but it's,
you'll get what you want.
It's a ticket price to get in. Nothing but white people and all the guns you can eat. You'll have a great time. But here's the thing: we had open carry, and you could bring double shotguns legally into Price Chopper, the grocery store. You can do that. But here's what was going to happen. It was not a political thing they're going to film and we're going to talk about this. No, you have the right to do that legally because there's no laws. And every other person is going to go to their office, to their car, to wherever, or they're already packing because there's no need for concealed carry licenses. There are no laws.
Wow.
There's no conceal them, shove them up your butt, Yeah. Put shotguns in your breakfast cereal. Send your kids to daycare with them. There's no laws. I'm not joking. It's the National Firearms Act, and which is just the broad one that covers everything. And then you can't. There's two laws. I'm not joking. You can't bring it in a courthouse, and you can't bring it on the way to a crime. Which I'm not sure how many prosecutions they had for that. Like you're announcing your intent, and then you could be arrested for it. I don't know the statute, but there are no laws. So you could walk in with four shotguns and 2 hunting rifles into the grocery store, and you have the legal right to do that. They're also going to call the police because you look insane, because those are rutabagas. What are you doing, Rambo? Everyone's going to come out, and they're going to be behind the corn section, waiting to see what you're going to do.
Why do you need a gun for the pies? Yeah. Right?
Why did you need that?
It's just, why did you need the gun to get the pie? Something might be wrong with you. Yeah.
Because guns, hooray, you have guns. Everyone has guns.
I don't mean to laugh. It's really violent and awful. It's an awful
But we
part
weren't
of our
shooting
society.
each other in the ass. We weren't shooting each other in the ass all the time. But this thing,
it was a different NRA. Let's talk about it. Let's connect it. It was a different NRA. It was different. Something, to me, Sandy Hook seems to be the turn.
Yeah.
The real outward turn, whether there was internal stuff going on that was devious that we didn't know about before that. Certainly Sandy Hook was the moment where the NRA said, oh, now we have to actually lift our skirt up and take a position and show you actually where we're standing. And they stood exactly where Greg started this whole thing, this whole conversation. They stood there. They stood with our enemies. They really did. They stood with our enemies. And then since everyone was okay with that, they're like, all right, well, so since you're okay with standing with our enemies, we'll send you one of our Tambuff Mafia crime lords and this piece of tail that we told to lose 40 pounds real quick. And here's your bottled red dye hairstyle, and get your freaking manicure together, because you're going to be meeting some Republican men, some unfuckable men. You're going to have to get in there with them. Boom, send those guys in with bags of cash, right? God knows how much money they were pushing here and pushing there.
They were actually there before, they were there before. They were there from 2011. They'd already started their work. So maybe, as you look at why the NRA changed its position, it may be that they were already under the influence in 2011 of this very
I don't think they had a choice. Wayne LaPierre seems to be a very well-kept man. He's like the trophy wife. Like, I've never seen a trophy wife before. He is so well kept.
But he seems to be corrupt and everything. Yeah. Look, he built an entire organization around his corruption and around protecting his corruption. So even if the direction wasn't going in the direction that the membership wanted, he had built an organization around him to protect his crimes and his corruption. The thing about the Sandy Hook thing that breaks my heart is it happened in 2012. And, they're only going to be able to start prosecuting or taking their case against Remington. They've taken a stand all along that the firearms manufacturer should be responsible for what went on. And they've had a really difficult time going through the courts over the last decade. And finally, the Supreme Court has allowed them to do it. And so hopefully, at the start of next year, they'll be able to finally get to the case that they've been trying to get to for over a decade, which is to sue the arms manufacturer for the tragedy that befell them and their school and their family. It's quite tragic that it takes so long just to get to the court for this. It takes a whole decade for these people to even get to court on the case that they should be able to. And then you got this firearm manufacturer, which is, in the meantime, by the way, declared bankruptcy and reorganizing itself so it can avoid paying all these fees or fines that it might get. And it's the supplier of Remington, of the NRA's, big projects. It does all these. It sponsors a lot of events through the NRA. The NRA is not just a nonprofit run by its members. It's run by the arms manufacturers and by the arms lobby.
That's right.
And those are the people that want to avoid liability.
For arms, so
it's not just a nonprofit. It can, I suppose, be a nonprofit and a lobby group as well. But it's much more sinister than that. They're hiding behind.
It likes to pretend that it is, though.
Yes.
It pretends that it's the Boy Scout troop leader who pays the dues, and that's where all the money's coming from. And no. There's too much money coming in. There's not that many Scoutmasters anymore.
Sorry,
there's more money going out than's coming in. I mean, they're basically a PR machine. Mm-hmm. They have all these fancy expenses. They're spending money on themselves lavishly in ways that we can't even fathom. They had a channel, a television channel. These are not cheap things, and they're stuffing politicians with millions and millions and millions of dollars. They're just stuffing their pockets. Mm-hmm. Where's all this fucking money coming from? I think Tish James is really brilliant. I do, because I don't think that the membership dollars are going to match up to the kinds of money that was pouring out of that criminal enterprise, right? By those crooks.
Yeah,
it's not
I think
going
that's
to
the
match.
thing. Look, if they were spending $65 million every 3 years, or just for those 3 years that she's alleging, plus they were paying, you can't read this properly, but $24 million just to pay the GOP representatives in 2016. This is not Trump. This is just other Republicans. $24 million is a ton in politics. Where is all this stuff coming from? You just add all that up and you're already, and the 30 million to Trump, and you're already at over $100 million. They're not making that much money.
Just in an article I wrote in the Dallas, there was Dallas Morning News, in the Dallas newspaper about a simple, I know not to take these people on head on at their talking points or gun grabbing or whatnot, because nobody is suggesting, for the most part, ever. I've never heard anyone say collect up all the guns. First of all, it's impossible, and nobody says it.
Right.
But digitize the ATF's records or anything, the CDC stuff. anything. I'm not going to take your gun, but can I count up how many people get shot? I made the suggestion of how about you have to have insurance to have a firearm because it's got negative externalities. Like driving a car, you have the freedom to do that, but you all have to have a pool of insurance money because these things kill tens of thousands of people every year. We don't want to take away your freedom or your ability to drive just because you suck or you get drunk a lot or whatever, but you just have to have insurance. And I suggested that. How about we have insurance for firearms? And wow, I didn't really get, hate mail and harassment until like, the whole, 2016 Russia Trump thing. But this was a good, this was originally October 8th, 2015.
It's a really good idea.
It was a good warm up
It seems to
for hate mail.
Here's the thing, and I think that we've got a society that would ultimately, if you gave society all the weapons you wanted and society left on its own and democracy left on its own, they would not be shooting at people in the streets and in schools. But because we've now opened ourselves to this data world, and because we're so manipulatable by external sources, and because all these intelligence services around the world, whether it's the Saudis or the Chinese or the Russians, are working so hard to change our behaviors and manipulate our politics, that it's so easy then to take, our society, divide us, create conflict like we've seen over the last few years, and on top of that, add a layer of violence with guns because the guns are there already.
That's right, Zev. Right on the money.
One last question takes us full circle to the start of the show. Matthew wants to know, any news on what the SDNY, I think it means New York State, suing the NRA means for the traitor-in-chief, Donald Trump? And the answer is, I think, plenty. Because, $30 million went from Russia through the NRA into his coffers, and that is one of the reasons he won. I think the NRA investigation is going to land up being a criminal prosecution as well. It's right now just a civil case, but it sure looks like it's got all the makings of a prosecution in a RICO case, even possibly. But I don't know about that, and I'm not a lawyer, so I won't guess. But $30 million drove that campaign, and Mr. LaPierre, with his fancy yachts and his manicures, was the reason that was allowed to happen. And the tailor. So
these crotches ain't gonna measure themselves, Zev.
Support Narativ's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative, and check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe and download.